Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for July 21st, 2025. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos? Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz? Here. Mr. Byers?
Here.
Mr. Roberge?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have two public commenters tonight. And I'm sure you're familiar with the rules. I think we have the same rules. Ask that you state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes for comment. And first commenter is Susan Schaefer.
The mic's on. Mayor and members of the Town Council, I am Susan Schaefer, and I was on the McLean County Board for 14 years and a leader not just locally, but through NACO Leadership Network for changes to the mental health system. I was an active participant in the development of the Mental Health and Public Safety Fund. I believe the background information provided in your packet is misleading and incomplete. The county created a separate fund, and a report is provided annually as called for in the IGA. I have spoken with some of you multiple times because you have taken the report out of context for your own interpretation to further whatever your personal agenda is. The amendment to pause was not moved forward by the County Board Executive Committee. It does not belong on your agenda tonight. Mayor, as you know how hard it is to get various complex projects off the ground, like the overpass turned underpass. It's been, 6 years and $5 to $30 million? Yet a mere 19 months ago, then County Board Chair Metzger paused Behavioral Health Coordinating Council because she realized it was not working and the money was not getting to the community. You and Ms. Reese were totally on board with Metzger's decision. Less than a year ago, the restructured BHCC in fact met for the first time and created clear directions and processes. I was part of both, as was Mr. McCarthy. They are working on a new mental health action plan. Your mantra is, we have a plan, we work the plan, exactly what BHCC is doing. Behavioral Health and Criminal Justice Coordinating Councils are aligning for coordinating support and integrated planning. The jail is the largest mental health provider in the county, and those needs have been increasing. Ms. Lorenz, I believe you have a conflict of interest, as you are employed by an agency who is a direct recipient of $1.3 million from the fund. Your agency stated they will be asking the fund for operating funds in the future. You, of all people, should be wanting this agreement to stand as is. For years, I have heard complaints about Aegis. The county allocated $6 million of ARPA dollars into the fund for the Aegis project. It is possible the incident in Sangamon County would have had a different outcome if it had been in McLean County because of Aegis. I ask all of you to get the facts about Aegis. Finally, I have a sense of deja vu, as this is a sad reminder of the Metcom and Metrozone agreements. You made a long-term commitment, and now you want to renege on that. What's more important to the town than the mental health of the community? What's your word worth? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Corey Byrne.
Good evening. My name is Corey Byrne. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Town Council. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have the privilege of representing a large section of Northeast Normal on the McLean County Board, where I serve as the chair of the Health Committee and a member of the Board of Health. It is my distinct honor as well to teach over 700 residents of the town of Normal at Prairie Land and Parkside Elementary Schools. I'm here to encourage you to vote no on agenda item number 10, the proposed pause of contributions to shared sales tax. While there are certainly ways that we as partners in this initiative can improve the process, which I will address, it is vital to center the idea that this is a mental health and public safety fund. Our community is home to resources and agencies dedicated to the myriad of mental health crises faced by our residents and that other larger communities can only dream about. from our 2 major hospitals and all their satellite offices and agencies to dedicated behavioral health agencies like Chestnut Health Systems and the Center for Human Services, to supportive social service agencies like the Baby Fold, YWCA, Fuse, Center for Youth and Family Services, and many, many more. These agencies operate on research and data and advise elected officials like the Health Committee and the Board of Health about our community's needs and how they should be prioritized. The research and data are clear. There is an increasing need for mental health services in our communities. It is seen as hospitals, doctor visits, crisis calls, and sadly in suicides as well. My own family has suffered a recent loss to suicide. Anecdotally, I personally see it in my classroom as well. None of this is new information. You're all well aware of and have committed to supporting initiatives with funding and other resources towards mental health and public safety. Just 2 weeks ago at Board of Health, we approved this year's Community Health Needs Assessment. This report will be disseminated pending approval by other healthcare bodies, but I can share some of the report's overall findings and priorities. Using data from over a dozen different agencies, including representatives from the city, the town of Normal, the county, schools, and businesses, as well as surveys to the public, 6 major needs were identified, and of those 6, 3 priorities were targeted for focus: access to care, healthy eating and active living, and behavioral health. These were the same priorities in the previous report, and they've carried forward because the need has increased. This is a situation in which elected officials need to listen to the experts. There has been rightful criticism in the past of folks like you and I, who are not mental health or public safety experts, who have made unilateral decisions about how this money is used and the decision-making processes involved in that. It is difficult to see how that this body is not doing that right now. So let's listen to the experts. I'd like to share some words by Mr. Kevin McCall, former head of the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council. Quote, "A pause would create a lot of reluctance from organizations to collaborate on projects, as they have for many years. Distrust and uncertainty has historically held up deployment of funds. We need collaborators, and collaborators need stability. Stepping down funding models provide the accountability that taxpayers are looking for, but it cannot be carried out if we don't know what funding will exist in a year from now," end quote. This fund and its oversight bodies needs reform, particularly with transparency in its procedures. The current iteration of the McLean County Board is doing the work to get this done and seeking input from our partners and stakeholders. 4 days ago, the board approved an audit of this fund. Since then, I've personally reached out to every member of the Bloomington City Council and Normal Town Council and have had the pleasure of speaking with several town council members on this issue and most of the BCC as well. Committing to fixing the process and collaborating on solutions is the path forward to addressing the town's needs. Let's collaborate on this audit and identify details and shine a light on them. Let's streamline the processes, celebrate our successes, and support our partners. I'd encourage you to approve the audit, vote no on pausing funding, collaborate with your partners on solutions. Let's not blow this thing up. Thank you.
We move to the omnibus agenda items considered routine and will be handled with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. Ms. Smith?
Item H.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz?
Items E as in echo and F as in Frank.
Motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Items on the omnibus tonight that are approved as omnibus are approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 16th, 2025, a report to receive and file Town of Normal expenditures for payment as of July 16th, 2025, a resolution waiving the formal bid process and executing a 3-year agreement with All City Management Services Incorporated for school crossing guard management services. A resolution waiving the formal bid process and authorizing the purchase of a John Deere Pro Gator with the select spray attachment from Herb Turf Equipment via the Sourcewell Grounds Maintenance Joint Purchasing Contract in an amount of $62,117.98. A resolution approving executive session minutes to be released, certain executive session minutes, and to retain the confidentiality for other certain executive session minutes. A resolution authorizing a motor fuel tax resolution bid award concurrence through the Illinois Department of Transportation and an associated budget adjustment for the West College Avenue project from North Fork Southern Railroad to White Oak Road. A resolution authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement with the International Association of Firefighters, Local 2442, and an associated budget adjustment. A resolution to award a contract to J. Spencer Construction for the gallery lobby improvement at the Illinois State University Art Gallery in the amount of $43,000, and an ordinance accepting utility easements at 100 North Rivian Motorway. Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Those items are approved. Item E is a resolution to accept bids and award a contract to Row Construction for the Constitution Trail repaving project in the amount of $35,800. Ms. Lorenz?
So moved, please.
Ms. Lorenz?
Thank you. Yeah, I like to bring this up again. I think I have brought it up on other occasions when we take on a project to repave the trail. This is about a half a mile of a trail segment. I think we've done a mile in the past. And so it runs around $70,000 per mile. And I've asked, and I will ask again tonight, which is why I've pulled this, and I'm glad that we've got members of another elected body in the audience. Could we look in the future projects for trail maintenance to combine efforts with the city and the county to bid the projects together and perhaps get savings on the project?
I have mentioned this in the past to my counterparts. I will bring it up again, and we'll make sure to keep the conversation going with the city and the county.
Okay.
and
Not
see
sure how much it'll save, but, you know, certainly economies of scale can't hurt.
if we can explore it for sure.
Thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That resolution is approved. Item F is a resolution to accept bid and award a contract to Autobahn Company Incorporated for the Sculpture Park project in the amount of $218,367 and an associated budget adjustment.
So moved, please.
Second.
Ms.
Okay,
Lorenz?
thank you. Me again. I pulled this one because I have some questions, since this is necessitating a budget variance and adjustment. What are we getting in this phase? What part of the sculpture will be completed? Yeah, that's my first question.
Sure. Well, this action item specifically is the construction phase, the hard surface, the work getting the site ready for sculpture. So Autobahn's work would be $218,000. That was their bid, which we budgeted $150,000 this year. That's why we're asking council to authorize the associated budget adjustment. The selection of sculpture and installation of sculpture will come later,
Okay.
if I understand it correctly. I'm looking for Ms. Wissman. Oh, yes, thumbs up, so that, yes.
Okay, so I am concerned that we're going over budget, and I want to preface all my comments here that are going to sound concerning. I want to make sure that everyone knows that I do really value public art. I really do. But I feel like it's a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we are still okay and able to afford this effort. Because right out of the gate, we're going over budget. And we weren't given a picture to see what the resulting value engineered project will be. So I'm just concerned about what we're getting for our money. And do we as a body want to be wide-eyed about this and say, yes, we still feel like we've got the money to do this? As important as it is, and as much as I do really support public art, sadly, it's not mission critical, right? And so I just want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position to maybe not be able to afford something at another point that is mission critical. So can you speak to the affordability and the value for what we're getting, given this price overrun?
Sure. Well, I don't know that I can speak to value. I think value is a judgment, but I can tell you that as part of this action item, we would plan in future budget years to reduce our out-year expenses. So overall, over multiple years, we were looking at 480,000, I believe, is what we indicated in the report. Since what we'll be doing is spending more today to get
Okay.
the infrastructure in place, we would reduce and modify the future year expenses.
Okay. So we still feel like we're going to stay within the original budget, even though this first phase of preparatory work is going over budget?
Yes.
Okay. And do we feel that we still have the bandwidth to be able to do this amenity?
To do what?
To
Pardon me?
do this public art amenity?
Yes, we wish we had more money and could do more art, but to stay within the $480,000 budget, I think we're reducing the initial scope of pieces that will be installed.
So any other penny pinching anywhere else is not of concern that this is going to be taking away from valuable resources?
No, we wouldn't make the recommendation if that was the case.
Okay, very good. That's all I have.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item H is a resolution to accept bids and award a contract to Row Construction, a division of United Contractors Midwest, for the 2025 General Street Resurfacing Project in the amount of $3,356,897.49.
Move for approval.
Second.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, I had emailed Ms. Reese to request a cost per lane mile on this because I believe, was there just one successful proposal? And I think it's important that we have some context when circumstances put us in that situation.
Yes, one bidder on this project, yes. And in terms of the cost per lane mile on this
Yes.
particular contract,
Yes.
I think the calculation was approximately $677,000 per lane mile for this contract.
And in your response to me, you also highlighted the fact that in looking at some other projects, that cost per lane mile was quite a bit of bargain because the road condition isn't as bad as some of the other projects that have been undertaken. So did that give you some confidence then to move forward with recommending this contract?
Well, we have a resurfacing contract every year, and we have a single bidder that's, the number is kind of what we get. We would, if we can't afford the contract, we would probably reduce the quantity of pavement to resurface. In this particular instance, though, comparatively, one of our projects that is rebuilding a road is Chippewa Street that's currently under construction. That's much more expensive than this resurfacing contract. And then as council is aware, we have 2 resurfacing contracts each year. This is the general resurfacing contract. The other resurfacing contract is motor fuel tax. That particular contract is a little bit cheaper per lane mile. I believe that was $463,000 per lane mile. We had 2 bidders in that instance in different streets. Each street is unique in terms of what work needs to be accomplished. So this particular contract is a little pricier per lane mile than the MFT contract, but still we get a number of streets resurfaced this year and into next year before we enter the 2026 resurfacing contract. So trying to make progress on our pavement preservation and resurfacing efforts.
And that's tied into the PACER analysis. Is that what you were referencing there?
Yes, the Engineering Division of Public Works selects and prioritizes the streets in terms of making progress on our PACER ratings. So,
That's all I had.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That resolution is approved. Concludes our omnibus agenda. We have 3 items of general orders tonight. The first is an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2024-25 operating and capital investment budget.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you. As to refresh your memory on this, this is something we do every year to kind of reconcile our budget. Ms. Reese, do you have any comments?
Well, you're correct, Mayor Kus. This is the time of year when we ask council to take a look back at last year's fiscal year to approve all the amendments that took place last fiscal year. And then in September, we will be coming before council with the annual audit report and financial trends report. So this is just one of the steps to conclude last fiscal year. If you have specific questions about the report, I will ask Mr. Hune to come forward.
Thank you. Questions on this? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, the ordinance is approved. Item 8 is a resolution approving the Vineyard Subdivision 6th amended preliminary plan.
Move approval.
Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, that resolution is approved. Item 9 is a resolution conditionally approving the final plat for the Vineyards 11th Edition re-subdivision of Lot 374.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion. Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, that resolution is approved and concludes general orders. 3 items of new business. The first is a resolution approving an amendment to the shared sales tax agreement with the City of Bloomington and McLean County to pause sales tax sharing during pending negotiations.
Move approval.
Ms. Reese?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll do a brief introduction of this item that's before you this evening. There are 2 items. The following item pertains to the audit. They're both related. Mayor can decide if we want to talk about both those at the same time.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. Just in terms of some background, in 2016, actually in 2015, the Normal Town Council adopted a 1% sales tax that went into effect in 2016. As part of that sales tax, that moved our sales tax from 2.5% to, or 1.5% to 2.5%. That 1% additional sales tax then was determined through an intergovernmental agreement with the city and the county and the town that we would all share 0.25% of that 1%. So 25% of the 1%. The city of Bloomington also adopted that additional 1% sales tax. So both the town and the city chose to enter into an agreement with the county. All 3 parties adopted an intergovernmental agreement on this topic. We've communicated in the council report the language associated with how the county can use the funds. Specifically, in terms of this agenda item, I just want to say I don't think it's particularly complicated. It simply is relating to how the 3 parties can move forward in this particular situation to renegotiate the intergovernmental agreement for a couple of reasons. And the language of the intergovernmental agreement specifically references changes in law or circumstances and how the 3 parties must negotiate in good faith to amend the agreement under certain circumstances. We believe those circumstances exist. what the changing circumstances are, what we are, how we are functioning today in 2025 was completely unforeseen in 2016 when the intergovernmental agreement was adopted. Specifically, the county received multiple millions of dollars of American Rescue Plan Act funds that they dedicated towards some eligible expenses from the intergovernmental agreement. As council knows, the intergovernmental agreement identifies eligible use of those funds. We continued to pay our shared sales tax and disperse money to the county while they had received their ARPA funds. In addition, the county's been very successful in getting other grant dollars, and that's wonderful. And another unforeseen circumstance is since 2016, the sales tax also is collected on internet sales. Those situations have resulted in the county currently having a fund balance of over $20 million. You know, we have discussed fiduciary responsibility. We believe that during the time the three parties are renegotiating the intergovernmental agreement, it would make sense for the town and the city to cease submitting shared sales tax month after month during this negotiation period. The proposed amendment before you determines that for a period of 12 months, potentially more, but a minimum of 12 months, the town and the city will no longer send monthly sales tax disbursements to the county. That allows the county to draw down some of that fund balance. And during this time, we will all come together and negotiate in good faith some modifications to the intergovernmental agreement moving forward. It's also important to note that it's a 20-year agreement adopted in 2016, which means we're soon coming up on year 10. The Normal Town Council adopted this in February of 2016. So in February 2026, it will be our 10th year. As we go into the 10th year of our 20-year agreement, with the significant fund balance that the county currently has, we believe the time is right for all three parties to come together. So we've had good conversations. The county attorney in the county administrator's office drafted the language, worked with us on language that we believe Normal Town Council and ultimately Bloomington and the county can support. And you are the first entity that we're asking to approve this. If council approves this, it will be before the Bloomington Council next Monday night at their regular meeting.
Ms. Lorenz?
Are you taking comments at this point?
Sure.
Okay. I'm glad you started us off, Ms. Reese, with a bit of history because that is where I would like to start my comments, if it's all right. And if possible, I'll go a little longer, but I promise to bring it in for a landing because I have my notes. So I won't get lost out there, I promise, Mr. Mayor. So I do feel like a quick rewind is in order before we talk about pausing the sales tax transfer. As Ms. Reese said, nearly a decade ago, negotiated a 20-year intergovernmental agreement to fund the Mental Health and Public Safety Fund. And it was built around these three core promises. The McLean County Jail Expansion Debt Service and the operations of that expanded facility. Two, there goes my screen. Two, to modernize the Integrated Justice, I believe it's Information System, AEGIS, that kind of massive public safety database that, among other things, serves our own law enforcement in the field. And three, to invest in community mental health and related human services programming. I was a young, much younger, council member at the time, and I do remember former council member Cheryl Gaines being very passionate about that third promise, she herself being a counselor professionally. That coalition was assembled, that assembled the proposal are names that are really from the past. Then County Board Chair Matt Sorensen, Bloomington Mayor Terry Renner, our own Normal Mayor Chris Coos, City Managers David Hales from Bloomington and Mark Peterson from Normal. And I think I've got this one right, County Administrator Leader Bill Lawson. Okay, I wasn't sure if it's him or John Zunick. Of today's council, there's only 3 of us, besides the mayor, of course. There's only 3 council members sitting here that took that vote. Myself, Mr. Preston, and Mr. McCarthy. So I take us down that recap because institutional continuity does matter, especially in the face of what is typical turnover. And I believe in a term of extreme ownership when it comes to leadership. And at that point, on that point, I want to say we haven't kept up. The last time we received a full in-person briefing from the county leadership was Chairman John McIntyre and then Administrator Camille Rodriguez. It was sometime during the 2019 council because I remember Mr. Stan Nord sitting here. It was more than 5 years ago, I'm sure. And since then, that was our last verbal report. And since then, we've received mostly just written reports that gave us little or no chance for any dialogue. We can fault the county for not updating us, but the truth is we share in the responsibility for not demanding better accountability. A point on which I have raised much public concern in the past privately to Ms. Reese and to our mayor, and even in a more public setting on numerous occasions. Because I've said often that worse than taxing people is taxing them and then not using the money either expeditiously or for what it's been asked for. So I want to go back to 2016 and the years that immediately followed and remind us of the things that have been done, particularly on the mental health funding, that it has seeded some real services like Fuse that targets high utilizers cycling through jail, ER, and homelessness, among other things. It serves about 15 people. The Triage Center, which opened around 2020, which is now the Behavioral Health Urgent Care Center. It was run and funded by the county with the shared sales tax, but has since been transferred to the McLean County Center for Human Services. They take up the ownership of running it financially. And then efforts to do an adolescent outpatient center was turfed to the ROE, Regional Office of Education, who created the Central Illinois Bridge Academy. These are all very, very good things, not all of which is still funded by the shared sales tax. I believe only the Fuse program is currently funded by the shared sales tax. There's been a myriad of other studies funded, research done by the BHCC, Behavioral Health Coordinating Council, the most notable of which that I can recall is about a $2 million SAMHSA grant for system of care that I wish I knew more about the impact of that. I'm not aware if there's been any local match to that 4-year grant. I believe it's a 4-year grant. But I would hope there would be so that you would mitigate the burn rate of the grant funds. But I don't know those details. Then in 2024, I'm almost done, the county restructured the governance, as Ms. Schaefer said, and I think made strides forward, significant strides forward in improving the decision-making process for the disbursement of these funds. And it was in the 2025 timeframe that a revamped strategic plan was created, and that was when the priority was to address the need for more temporary safe outdoor shelter, i.e. something more safe than tents, because we had a burgeoning number of tent encampments. Thus was born the idea for an RFP for a temporary safe shelter solution, to which there was one agency who responded. Yes, my employer, Home Sweet Home Ministries. Their proposal was approved, and yes, a grant has been awarded to them for this purpose. I applaud the effort. I believe that is what that process right there, identifying a need, developing an RFP, calling for proposals, and issuing a grant is exactly what needs to happen. And we've done it once. I see a nod. I see a shaking of the head. We can talk about that. But I will point to that one time and say, I believe that was a success. I think the cycle could be improved in terms of its timeliness, but that's for another part of the conversation. My point is, things have happened with this money. We have a better jail. We have programs in that better jail. We have set aside tens of millions of dollars for this very complex Aegis system, of which I'm not very familiar as much as I am with the mental health aspect. We are committed, it sounds like, until 2027 for the item that was purchased, a company named Caliber. And I learned just 2 months ago that not everybody is happy with the purchase of Caliber. That's been a big problem. So I believe, to bring it in for closure, I believe that we do need to talk about an audit for the process, an audit of decision-making that was made perhaps for a 10, 20, maybe $30 million IT system that not everybody's happy about. These issues do need to be addressed, and I think an audit is a way to go. What I want to say in closing on this part of my comment is this. Let's not forget why we raised this money, this tax in the first place. Three promises: to modernize the jail, expand the jail, to modernize the Aegis system, to better serve our law enforcement, and to invest in community mental health services. That's why I voted for this 10 years ago, and that's the promise I believe we need to keep to our taxpayers. I hope that bit of history has helped. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you. I'd like to get some clarification of the actions that we foresee taking place during this pause, because I don't want that to get lost in a discussion of why we're seeking this pause and what we hope to take place during the pause.
Sure. I believe the goal during this 12-month period is for the town leadership, county leadership, and City of Bloomington leadership, again, all based on the assumption that we're going to all be approving this amendment. During this 12-month period, we'll be coming together to modify the intergovernmental agreement, however the three parties feel it should be modified, and how this intergovernmental agreement will function for the next 10 years, based on the information we know today in terms of the revenue stream that we're getting and sharing with the county and their obligations, and just looking at the entire intergovernmental agreement. And then ultimately, once the three parties agree on any modifications to the IGA, we would present that to our respective bodies for approval.
So the participants in the discussions will be representatives from the City of Bloomington, from the Town of Normal, and from the county. So all the partners to the agreement will be represented at the table as these discussions take place.
Yes, typically when negotiating intergovernmental agreements and contracts, it's the administration from each of those entities.
And in the existing intergovernmental agreement, is there some limits to the language that prevent addressing some of the issues you raised in terms of the additional funding that was forecast, wasn't forecast from internet sales? There wasn't an anticipation of grant dollars going towards this, certainly not ARPA dollars after a pandemic going to this. So in the existing intergovernmental agreement, is there the flexibility to broaden or specifically address some services that maybe aren't taking place now?
I think everything will be on the table. I can't say what will or won't be discussed, but we will be starting with the existing intergovernmental agreement and then figuring out, again, what the priorities are and what the needs are and what the next 10 years look like of this 20-year agreement.
Well, I think it's timely to sit down and have these discussions at this time with the federal government making the cuts that it did to Medicaid. And that certainly was something that wasn't anticipated. And I think it is part of what does need to be addressed under a revised agreement. And I would just like to add that there's precedent for Normal and Bloomington cooperating in revising an agreement, as was done with our shared agreement for supporting Connect Transit. A working group was formed that looked at all facets of that and came back to the table to say, in order for us to provide services in a way that can be supported, we're asking the municipalities to up their donations or their support to these programs so that we can get more of a match from the state. So there was an outcome that resulted in a better funding of a program, and I have no reason to believe that there's any agenda that predetermines a reduction or elimination of funding for this program. And in fact, the precedent is there that what we're asking for is a pause so that we can have frank and candid conversations at the table. And I don't want to get into what that should look like tonight, because it's only saying we want the structure put into place to allow that conversation to occur. And I'm in favor of making that conversation happen because of all of the changes that have taken place. A $20 million surplus is not something that would be eliminated in 1 year of a pause. And I have confidence that there's no worry about continuity and funding, and it would be up to all the parties to reassure the partners and that they fund that why this is happening. It's unfortunate that if any other message has been communicated to them. So I am in favor of this pause and the audit.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. I will be brief. I think leverage off of the comments of my colleague here. First, I guess I want to back up and say that when you consider opportunities in communities and what governments can do with their money and their influence, right? Mental health seems like a really good place for us to be partnering. And as a member, as my counterpart pointed out, of one of the three here that voted for it back then, and who's been involved on the advisory council since its formation, I'm grateful that all three government bodies came together to decide to act. That at least the three of us and others at the time raised our hand at our own political peril and said, we're going to raise taxes to fund something that we believe is in the public interest. I still believe in that. I'm still committed to that. I'm hearing fear out there, and I don't know. I'm hearing some tonight, and I'll have the opportunity to talk to some more, I believe. But a pause isn't a stop, and I want to put that out in the public domain. Is that we're talking about an opportunity here. Some good work has been done. Some of it's been identified by my counterpart, Ms. Lorenz. But we're still committed to this partnership, and I want that to be one of the main takeaways this evening, is that is not changing with this conversation. But many things have changed in 10 years, as has been outlined by Ms. Reese, I think, and I think we all agree on those things. Some was stated here that maybe we haven't been as successful as we wanted to be, and that we're hoping for greater success with some of the changes, and hopefully more still. But I do think it's a perfect time to be pausing. There is a substantial amount of money that's been identified here, plenty of money to cover the commitments that the county has made with the money and the programs that it's currently funding, to take that pause. And so opportunity, change, enough money in a bucket to pay for our commitments. I think this is the perfect time to do that, to talk about some of those changes and how maybe we are more successful going forward. As was suggested, maybe we need to focus our energies and get that expert guidance that our colleague shared with us a little bit earlier. So for those reasons, I'm supportive of both of these amendments. Thanks.
Mr. Preston?
Thanks. So I will start by expressing my support for the town being an active participant and community partner in working to address behavioral health and mental health services in this community. I think that is something that is not lost on me, that we all are probably aware of the need that exists and the continued need, and especially in light of the uncertainty coming out of Washington, making sure that we are making good on the commitment to not decrease, not cut mental health funding as a result of action here tonight is very important to me personally. And so with that as context, looking at the numbers, the action that we're taking tonight, I am under the understanding will not have an impact on the money that goes out the door during the pause. Those funds and then some still exist and will be allocated as intended. There will not be a cut to mental health as a result of a one-year pause. And so looking at the intergovernmental report that was shared with us, it just for, without getting too wonky on numbers, between calendar year 2025 and calendar year 2026, so those 2 years of time, the total expenses for shared sales tax revenue by the county is expected to be around $18 million. And so $18 million in expenses, a current budget or a current fund balance of $20 million. And because it's over the course of 2 years, this pause would only be one of those 2 years. We've already been paying, the first 6 months of this year, and then presumably if this passes, we would pay the second 6 months of 2026. If you take out just 1 year of revenue, I still believe with the 20 million, roughly 5 million in revenue, and the 18 million in expenses still puts this fund in a healthy position financially, and allows us, again, to meet the obligations that have been committed to, the priorities that have been committed to with mental behavioral health, because that's an important piece to this. So with that, the numbers add up for me. And then lastly, I will echo some of the thoughts about the timing. I think that nearing the 10-year mark makes a lot of sense. I am very keen on this kind of approach happening with all three parties, the town, the city, and the county, at the table, and willingly at the table, and working in a collaborative approach. Because ultimately, end of the day, we are one community. We're trying to address community needs, not specifically just town needs or city needs or county needs. And taking that holistic approach is, at the end of the day, to the betterment of everybody in this community. And I believe that utilizing the next 12 months with this pause and the audit to renegotiate what is best and what makes the most sense all the way around moving forward from there. Makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm in support. Thanks.
Mr. Byers.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief. Also, thanks to staff. I know they've been putting in a lot of work on this, and also thanks to our county board colleagues that are here tonight at City Hall to discuss this important issue. It is a really crucial issue, as all of my colleagues have mentioned. We entered into this agreement, which well predates my time on the council. I think I was still an ISU student when all this was happening. So, but I appreciate the foresight of council and county board and Bloomington council members past to think about this issue, because I think this issue has probably only gotten more and more important as time has gone on. So I appreciate those that had the foresight to be thinking about this. And the high level thought that I would share is that I know that the town, the city, and the county will all have our own perspectives on how exactly the governance of this issue or of this agreement, should work in the future. But just hope it's not lost that this isn't a town, a city, or a county issue. It's a community issue. So, thanks.
Mr. Roberge.
Two questions to start off. First off, for the pause, I'm assuming that in the language of the agreement, the amendment that we're looking at, there is no mention of the end of the pause, which obviously that's to be determined, but also whether that would be extending it to beyond the end of the agreement if we were to take a pause, if any of that time would be added on. So am I correct in assuming that the pause would basically be reducing our overall contribution to this fund for the life of the agreement?
That's likely, but I don't know how the IGA is going to be amended in the future. So what we are not doing is automatically adding any years to the end of our 20-year agreement. It's not now becoming a 21-year agreement or a 22-year agreement, anything like that. We have 10 years left on our intergovernmental agreement. The parties can come together and negotiate today, and it doesn't require your action. What we're asking is all the parties to agree to allow the town and the city to not make a monthly distribution of $400,000 between the two municipalities into the $20 million pot, which keeps growing each month, while we're going through this process. So that's all we're asking of council and ultimately Bloomington Council and McLean County, to cease the monthly distribution of the shared sales tax while we negotiate this. And then I can't tell you what the intergovernmental agreement will look like when we all reach agreement on the next 10 years. So that's to be determined. But obviously, the county administrator, myself, and City Manager Juergens from Bloomington will be, listening to each of our bodies and bringing our priorities to the table, and we'll work through what all that language should look like for the next 10 years.
So my second question is, what's the plan for the monies that would have been contributed to the Mental Health Action Fund if we do end up passing this amendment and move forward with that? What happens to those?
We have not determined that. I have not predetermined any allocation of those dollars. We just know we will not be distributing it to the county if all three entities agree to this.
Okay. First off, I want to lead off just kind of applauding the people who had the foresight to start this fund up now more than 9 years ago. I know I personally, at the time, I was in Quantico, Virginia, waiting to head up to the Pentagon. So it was a very different world for me. Didn't even live in Illinois at the time. So I am glad that this is something that had the good fortune of coming into starting my time on town council. I have some real concerns about this pause because the way that the planning has been going for the county, I'm assuming that they were planning on this money continuing to come in prior to these negotiations and this pause coming up. So since they are still in the process of drafting their mental health action plan or behavioral health action plan, and it is forthcoming in the next couple of months, my concern is that the expenditures that they're planning through and potentially going to have money going out the door is going to go beyond what they have in the fund now. Because if we start reducing that contribution, their planning is very much changed. With that in mind, as Ms. Lorenz mentioned, or Mrs. Lorenz, excuse me, mentioned that we have this huge system with the Aegis that we're looking at changing, and it's coming out of this fund, and we don't know what that's going to look like yet. So with having this potential reduction in contribution to the fund, we're looking at a scenario where we can potentially outrun the amount of money that we have in this fund. And I see that as being a real problem if we do end up doing this pause. One of the things that I did when I was campaigning and when I was collecting signatures, I went around and talked to people, and mental health was one of the things I was most concerned about. It seemed like every other door I knocked on was some form of mental health professional, and every single person was absolutely gravely concerned about mental health in our community because of the issues that our county board member Byrne mentioned with the suicide and depression. We had a pandemic in that time. We've had 2 wildly different federal administrations, and now we're on a third. The uncertainty that we're going into, I do not think is something that we should move forward with this pause, because with that reduction, we don't have the opportunity that we had with the American Rescue Plan, where they were fortunate enough to get these extra funds. I think in this situation, the cavalry's not coming again. And if we have this pause, we are essentially going to reduce the amount of money that they have available to address these concerns. So I'm going to be a no on the First Amendment. I am fully in support of the audit, however.
Mr. Roberge, thank you for your comments. I do just want to make a couple of statements. Obviously, it's not intended to try to change your opinion. I just want to share some information about your comments. County Administrator Taylor, City Manager Juergens, and myself have been discussing this entire calendar year. So the county has been very, very well informed of the town and the city's position on this for this entire calendar year. And I've received numerous spreadsheets from the county administrator regarding their obligated dollars and their planned spend of funds. And I just want to make it clear, this pause does not bring the county's fund balance down to zero. In fact, the county agreed to a minimum, the language, which is a minimum of 12 months. And the proposed amendment does include language where the county can choose when, after that 12-month period, the disbursements commence based on a defined need. So I feel like we've been in a really good place with the county, which is why we all agreed to this language. They knew that we had concerns about the quantity of dollars in their fund balance with us continuing to submit money each month into that account. And then their kind of 9.5-year history of spend and their obligations. So there's much to work through, which is why we believe it will take about 12 months to come up with a modified intergovernmental agreement. As council's aware, as we've discussed here at the table, much of the obligations pertain to technology associated with the Aegis, and there's much to work out in that regard. But again, in terms of the timeline and the quantity of dollars the county has, they have felt confident to put their name on this this proposed amendment.
Mr. Preston?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Ms. Reese hit it more eloquently than I will, but would just reiterate the point made at one. I hear what Mr. Roberge is saying, and I share the same thought that if this action tonight were to in any way be a cut on mental health services, not allow the county to meet the needs of the obligations that we have over the next 12 months and beyond, including the additional, 4.7 million of Aegis, which is, typically it's been around 1.1 million before, including that, the numbers that we've gotten from the county suggest that is not something, thankfully, that is at risk, and so they're, pausing for 12 months, looking at the numbers that the county's provided us, and that intergovernmental report is a great resource, one of many. It will not put them in a situation where they will have to cut any mental health funding, and all those obligations will be able to be met. And then some, which I think is a very important piece, to your point, and I'm glad that a pause would not put them in that position.
Ms. Lawrence?
So I'm going to come back with more questions than a history lesson, one of which Mr. Roberge already asked, and that is about what's the plan for the money that's would presumably not be transferred to the county. And the answer I think we heard was, we don't know. That means it could be pavement, it could be public art, it could be salaries and benefits, anything that's general fund. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it is fair in terms of sales tax dollars go into the general fund, and then we make a recommendation to council on how to spend those dollars. So it could be transferred to a capital fund for a need or a priority, could remain in the general fund to fund a priority. That's yet to be determined. I haven't gone down that path because we have a lot of hoops to jump through to get to that discussion.
So I'm going to go back to where I started in my history lesson, which is the promises that were made for the use of these funds. To pay for the jail expansion and operations, to modernize Aegis, and to invest in community mental health and related human services programming. We need to hold those promises. I believe we need to hold those promises. I can support this pause if we continue to be the stewards of the money for those purposes. Because I think we are jumping to a lot of assumptions that $20 million is available. I learned from one of the members sitting in the audience today representing the county that they have 2 large balloon payments coming due for this Caliber system that is the Aegis system. They've taken several years to purchase and identify Caliber as the vendor. And then we found out, sort of in the file of not much transparency, we just find out, or I found out as a council member through a 2-on-1 with our city manager, that not everybody likes Caliber. In particular, the police departments find that it's not meeting their needs. And that's a problem. So that begs an audit, a postmortem on the decision-making, and a path forward on how to get the law enforcement whole on the data that they need out in the field. That sounds more like an audit than it does a pause. Because those 2 balloon payments are coming due. And they've, as I understand, have engaged with Caliber until 2027. So they bought it. There's some remorse. Folks, you got to get them all in the room and figure out how to make it all work, and how to keep the men and women out on the street doing law enforcement able to do their job with 21st century technology. So that is where I'm going to probably part ways with much of what's been discussed here, and I would like to entertain perhaps a motion that puts some more definition around the pause. There's a lot of loosey-goosey feeling here. Not sure if it's 12 months, not sure what's going to happen with the money. That feels very, very loose and uncertain. And if there's one thing sitting here that I do not want to be uncertain about, is the use of that money. We've got to figure out a way to have a workable solution for Aegis, and we've got to figure out a way to improve, and I think it was Mr. Byrne that said in a conversation I had with him, we have a transparency problem. We need a dashboard, and we need to evaluate the process. I couldn't agree more. Again, that sounds like an audit, and I don't think any of this, either the Aegis postmortem or the process review, needs to take 12 months. So I'm more in favor of the audit 100%, but I would like to put some definition around what's going to happen with the money that's paused. And I will not stand for anything other than the 3 promises that we raised this tax money for. And that as elected officials up here, we made a promise to the taxpayers. They didn't get to weigh in on this as a referendum. No, we did this because we're home rule. And we got to sit up here and take, at the peril of our political lives, like Mr. McCarthy said, and represent the community for the best of the community. And we promised them that this money was going to go for mental health, because you're absolutely right, Mr. Roberge. 10 years ago, mental health was a concern, and it's a concern now. And I've got here in a quote that I found, recently elected Mayor Brady on a ride-along said something to the effect of, he was with them and frontline officers encountering individuals in distress and have, quote, nowhere to turn, nowhere to point them. And I hear this because I do work in the social services sector, and I do hear that as soon as that police officer picks up that person who's on the street violating some ordinance and takes them to the hospital because they seem to be in some sort of health distress, that police officer isn't so much back in their squad car and making their way back to the station or wherever they're going next, that person isn't back out on the street. We do have a broken system. The system for mental health is not working to where we want to aspire and where 10 years ago we wanted to aspire to. That's why we need to get better at the process, whether it's been 1 time or 4 times that grants have been issued. I won't quibble over those numbers, but we need to get better at that process. And as Mr. Byrne even said to me, that life cycle of the money that goes into the county coffers from the sales tax and out to the community has got to get quicker. It can't be sitting there for year after year after year. And I have been vocal about that. When it was 7 million, when it was 11 million, when it was 17 million. I have not been happy about that very slow turnaround. But this doesn't mean a pause because the need is still there. It means an audit. And I think we can do the audit in 90 days max and get what we need to do and keep our promise to the taxpayers. If anybody's willing to entertain a motion to amend the pause to make the caveat that the money must remain used, whether it's issued by this town, whether in the city respectively, or by the county, that it stays for the purpose that it was intended for, I'd like to get behind that motion. I won't make a motion if it's gonna just die.
Before any motions or seconds, I guess I can certainly appreciate your comments. I can't declare, nor can anyone at the table, in terms of what Bloomington chooses to do with their share of the sales tax if we pause. So I know that you're just talking about us, but to amend the agreement has to go to all 3 parties. So I just want to express caution before we start talking about amending the agreement. When this language was presented to us by the county administration, and they clearly have a good picture of their planned expenses, and they're the ones that are comfortable with a minimum of 12 months. I can only speak with the information I can share with you is what I've received from county administration.
So if I may still
what
have
we've
the-
all talked about at the table.
If I may still have the floor, a question that you just raised, kind of highlight. What happens if this, let's just say hypothetically, doesn't pass tonight? Does it take all three to pass it or not pass it, or does any one of us pull out, have the ability to unilaterally pull out? Is it all or none?
Requires all parties to the intergovernmental agreement must agree to amend the intergovernmental agreement.
And I
That's
guess
all we're asking.
The last question that you kind of sparked then with your comment there is why, if this county administrator and their legal counsel were involved since the beginning of the year with the town and the city, do we have at least a representation of current and past council or county board members who seem surprised? Why do they seem surprised? That just doesn't add up to me.
I have no idea. I've communicated with you all. I can't explain the county's situation.
Well, I would like to,
There has been incredibly robust conversations among all the parties, including the county.
so it seems really odd that there's surprise by elected officials at the county. I know,
answer that.
just curious. May I,
You well exceeded your.
well, exceeded my time. All right, fine.
Mr. McCarthy, did you? Ms. Smith?
I just want to challenge the idea that an audit could be completed in 90 days. I'm aware that accounting firms have some staffing issues currently, and the availability of someone to take on a new assignment and find the staff able to do it is not something that occurs in 90 days. And so I'm against any limitations on either the proposed language for the audit or the proposed language for the pause, because my position is the whole idea of the pause is to get all three parties to this intergovernmental agreement at the table to talk and hammer out what does need to happen going forward, as we now have 9.5, almost 10 years worth of experience, and we are aware of some things coming down the pike. And rather than hamstring them from the dais of this is what they need to do, that I think is best left to the individuals in the room that have the ability and the opportunity to discuss them with laying all the cards on the table.
Mr. Byers?
Thanks, Mayor. So maybe I'll try to, I appreciate the comments of my colleagues and the concerns on the issue, and maybe just to try to bring it back to kind of the issue or the actual kind of vote we're taking. The issue, as I understand it, and my colleagues are welcome to correct me, is we're voting on an amendment to the agreement that, to the best of our belief, we believe that this is something that, the city and the county, that we had staff and our leadership had some conversation about and felt we had reached an agreement. And now I also understand that, there may still be concerns or issues outlying from some of the other parties, but the way I see it is we're voting on something that, we felt was representative of at least a verbal agreement to move forward this way. So that's kind of the high level. But then I think in the real world, as I think my colleague pointed out, all three of us have to vote to agree on this. And so the way I see it is we're voting tonight on something that, we felt we've had an agreement to move forward with an amendment. We're going to vote to approve it, and the other two parties are going to vote to approve it. Now, if the other two parties don't vote to approve it, well, then it's not going to happen. We're going to be back at the table. We're going to be back at the table anyway, is my view, right? I mean, this is going to be a robust conversation amongst all parties. But the way I view this is, I have to, defer to my colleagues and staff that have been having the conversations, because I personally, as a council member, outside of talking to some of my counterparts of the county, have relied on a lot of our counterparts in leadership to have those conversations. So where I feel in making this vote, and I think there are a lot of questions and concerns that are important that we've discussed tonight, is ultimately I feel the right thing to do is to support what's on the table, knowing that there's still a lot of conversation and dialogue to be had amongst all parties, but that to the best of our knowledge that our leadership's presented this as this is the amendment that's been agreed upon, and if that ends up to not be the case, then there'll be more conversation and we'll figure that out from there. I don't know if that's a fair perspective to draw, but that's kind of where my head sits.
I just wanted to make one statement regarding the audit, so it's very clear. The next action item pertains to supporting the use of shared sales tax dollars to fund an independent audit. The town and the city have, I just want to make it clear, we do not believe that there's any concern that would justify or any fraudulent behavior, nothing like that. This is purely so that the three parties, when we come together at the table, are all working from the same information. I don't have a good understanding of the details the county has entered into with contractual arrangements and how the dollars have gone towards different expenses and the like. My guess is the city manager of Bloomington is in the same position. We felt it would be appropriate for all of us to come to the table from the same starting point, having a good understanding with an independent review of where the money so far has been allocated and spent, and just so we are all starting from the same point. And I did want to make it clear that I don't want anyone to believe that we think there's any concern or anything fraudulent which would justify an audit.
Do you have? I know you're waiting till last, but I'm going to go last. No? Okay. It's been a strong conversation here. I think some concerns are overinflated, and I'd like to bring it back to the fact that the county and the town and the city of Bloomington have a long history of trying to work together and get things done. I'm fully committed to that as mayor, that anything that needs to be done, has been done, should not be put in jeopardy. And I think we can address that while we're going through this review. I'm thinking back on plans that we've done, comprehensive plans, plans that we've done for future involvement, sustainability plans, things like that. We've never gone longer than 10 years without taking a hard look at those plans. And I think that's an appropriate thing to do. And it's unfortunate we didn't build that into the original agreement, that we would, at year 5, at year 10, at year 15, take a look at this and make sure we're all getting the same expectations that we had when we signed the agreement, and if we're not, how we were going to change that agreement to make that happen. And I think that's going to happen here. I, for one, strongly will fight to keep the mental health funding going if there's a need. If BHCC comes to us and said, we've got to get this project done, we'll figure out a way to get that done. And that's how partners work. That's how we're going to work together. And that's what I see coming out of this agreement. And I completely agree with what Ms. Reese just said. The fact that we don't have the data, or we don't think we have the data that we need to make good decisions on this. And so the audit, again, gives us a level playing field where everybody sees the same thing and we can make sound decisions based on that. I don't know how long this is going to take. I'd like to see it happen sooner than faster. And I think in terms of the agreement part, I think we can do that if we work together as partners, which is how this whole thing was set up in the first place. So I'm confident that we're going to get to a good place on this with this pause. But I'd sure like to see it get done in a year if we can do it. I think we can. Let's just cooperate and get this done. You've had your two.
It's 2 items.
Ooh, you got me. Go.
We have 2 times at each item, but 2 items times 2 is 4. If you are amenable to making sure, in good faith and as a good partner, and the next agency came based on the most recent strategic plan from the BHCC with a shovel-ready project that was $2 million. Would you be willing to codify that the town, as part of this pause, that the town would be willing to put that money towards the mental health project that was otherwise meant to transfer to the county?
That's a question that would be difficult for me to answer right now because I don't understand the total need. Again, we were talking 19, 20 million, whatever the number is, of dollars going into that fund. So there's certainly $2 million in the fund for that right-of-way project. So to get a better understanding if there's other needs that we're not even aware of,
There are.
I think the audit will show that pretty quickly. But I think the best way I could answer that is I would be very supportive of working through it. I'm not going to codify anything that I don't understand to exist.
Then could we do the audit first and pause if necessary?
You could make that amendment.
I'd like to make that amendment.
Second.
Discussion on the amendment.
Mayor, maybe just a question on what exactly we're voting on this amendment. I mean, there's already 2 separate items, one for the pause and one for the amendment. So I appreciate my colleagues wanting to dive in, but would it not just make sense to vote on each? Or what's the difference between the amendment versus just you could vote yes on one and no on the other?
My understanding is we're amending item 10, and you want to restate your amendment.
I'd like to, item 10 being which? I'm sorry, I've lost.
Pausing the shared sales tax.
I would like to amend the pause to be contingent on the completion of an audit that would show a pause is in fact necessary for a specified amount of time.
In the sense, how do you see an audit?
Well,
How do you see an audit
yeah, so
coming up with that information?
an audit may have CPAs involved, as Ms. Smith alluded to earlier, and their busy schedules. But I actually think that this is an audit that would be multidisciplinary in nature, in the sense that you probably ought to have some, certainly some law enforcement experts, some social service experts, and perhaps even some decision-making experts to do a postmortem on processes and decisions made. So I too don't believe that there's anything that's, errant of best accounting practices. So while a CPA should be a part of it, I don't think they are the only discipline that should be present. So I would like to see an audit conducted first with that multidisciplinary team, and let the results of the audit determine the nature and the length of the pause.
My sense on that is the audit is going to identify current spending,
Yes,
current
it's a
obligated
financial
dollars.
audit.
It's a
Right.
financial audit.
Right.
We're
Okay.
not, what you're asking for is what the 3 bodies are going to do with that information.
So let's just simplify it. My motion is to conduct the audit first, and that the motion, sorry, back up. I'd like to make an amendment to this item 10, that it be contingent on the completion of an audit and only done if the audit deems it necessary. And we'll just leave the audit undefined.
Second.
Okay.
Is that clear for
Um,
you, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm not going to support that amendment because all the audit is doing is giving us the common language to have the discussion. That is all it is doing. So we're not going to learn anything out of it without meeting. So we have the audit, the parties meet to discuss.
And then we can decide whether a pause is necessary.
I won't support that. Mr. McCarthy?
Sure, I'm not in favor. The audit doesn't establish criteria for a pause in an operating IGA. The rationale for the pause in the IGA stands on its own as part of the packet materials. So laying some incumbency of the audit determining some criteria for some other action is not the point and purpose of an audit. And so I'm not going to try to layer a level of I don't even know how we would do that, level of complexity and difficulty on top of an audit. I'm perfectly comfortable voting on the rationale for the pause on the merits that were presented on the need for the pause that were provided to us in the packet. Thanks.
Mr. Byers?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So for a couple of reasons, and I'll also maybe say the principal one, I'm no on the amendment because I see I think the amendment is unnecessary. If a majority of the council doesn't support moving forward with the pause at this time, a majority of us could vote no on item 10 and vote yes on item 11. And I think that would be a much cleaner procedural thing to do. So trying to bake all that into, well, we're going to vote yes to 10, but with this condition, I think it'd be cleaner to just say if a majority of us don't support the pause, that a majority of us could vote no on the pause. So so I'm going to vote no on the amendment, but that's just my feedback.
Further discussion on the amendment?
I think there's being too much pressure placed on the audit in this situation because the audit has to work with the individuals involved to get information. And if we're not having discussions as the audit is taking place, it can hamstring what they are able to find out. And as Mr. Bars pointed out, if you're not in favor of moving forward with the pause, vote no against the pause and vote yes for the audit.
The one last thing I just wanted to add, Mayor, is just a reminder to all my colleagues that anything we vote on tonight, as I understand it, is not actually going to happen unless the county and the city all agree. So it takes and usually it takes two. In this case, it takes three to tango on anything that we're voting on tonight, as I understand it.
Mr. McCarthy?
I guess related to this, but also larger, so shut me down if I'm going astray, Mr. Mayor. Feel free. Just, in kind of the larger conversation about this pause and as it relates to contingency or not, we all agree that the circumstance is changing, and even tonight we've heard some members from the board express dissatisfaction of where we are today as a result, and it's not what we had hoped for. And we all hope for better. I think that's been well expressed tonight. But remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If we don't pause to re-examine process, objectives, outcomes, measures, nothing's going to change. It's going to be doing the same thing we've been doing for the first 10 years, the second 10 years. And so no pause means doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 10 years. I'm not in favor of doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Please call the roll on the amendment. Oh, Mr. Roberge, sorry.
So before we move forward saying that things aren't changing and how this has been handled, I think it's important to acknowledge that there has been a
Mr.
major
Roberge,
change.
I was going to stop Mr. McCarthy from going broad because I think what
That's fair.
process here is to talk about the amendment. And then I'll recognize you for your comments on the other. Please call the roll on the amendment.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
No.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
No.
Mr. McCarthy,
No.
Mr. Preston,
No.
Mayor Kus.
No, the amendment fails. And now, Mr. Roberge, I'll recognize you.
Okay. Coming back to what I was saying, as far as the business as usual, I know that's the concern of some people for this. However, I feel like what we kind of the elephant in the room we have not mentioned is that the county board has had a major leadership change in the past 8 months, and business as usual is not going to be business as usual because of the change of leadership. And the runway that's been allowed for the county board, which has had a leadership change from parties for the first time in ever, is significant. And not giving them the time to get their feet under them and rewrite the behavioral action plan as they see fit, which was due for a major rewrite this year anyway, I feel like this pause is at the very least premature. That's all I have.
Further on this item, number 10. Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
No.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
No.
Mayor Kus.
Yeah, aye. The item 10 is approved. Item 11 is the resolution for the audit. Further discussion on that item.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That resolution is approved. Item 12 is a motion to approve appointments and an appointment to the Building Board of Appeals.
Move for approval?
Second.
Mr. McCarthy, if you would introduce that person.
Absolutely. The appointment is Mr. Rand Veerman. Mr. Veerman would fill the need for an electrical representative on the Building Board of Appeals. Mr. Veerman is retired from the town inspections department, where he worked for 17 years as an electrical inspector, well qualified. Mr. Veerman graduated from Illinois State with a bachelor's degree in psychology and from the University of Illinois with a degree in electrical engineering. He's been a licensed electrical contractor in the city of Bloomington since the early 80s and is a past president of the Illinois chapter of the International Association of Electrical Inspectors. While at the town, Mr. Veerman was a frequent instructor throughout Illinois, training other electrical inspectors, other electrical inspections in the field. In his free time, Mr. Veerman serves as the president and webmaster for the McLean County Genealogical Society. Mr. Veerman will fill a vacancy due to the resignation of Terry Sims, whose term would have expired on March 31st of 2026. Mr. Veerman's 4-year term will commence upon approval by council and will expire on July 31st, 2029.
Questions, discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That motion is approved. That concludes our business tonight. Before taking an adjournment, is there? Yes, there is. Council comments. Ms. Smith.
I wanted to highlight some news that came out today. A global seating supplier, Adient, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is coming to Normal and adding 75 new jobs. And they're taking advantage of some of the state tax credits, and I'm thrilled that Normal is continuing to build on its reputation as an EV-friendly town. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes, I won't rehash Adient. It's excellent to see the ripple effect of Rivian continuing in our community with positive development. Also wanted to take a moment to thank all staff in the town of Normal who worked on Make Music Normal. Despite some challenges with some very bad weather on Saturday, Saturday evening turned out to be great. I happened to be out there for a little while, and the place was packed. The music was great, and I can't even count the number of people that stopped me on the street to say how great the festival is, how great the job the staff does. So I'm passing that along, and how wonderful it is that the town is doing such things like Make Music Normal, that the residents get to come out and enjoy and be together and just have fun. So really great job to all the town staff that made that a reality. Thank you.
Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith? Mayor Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned.